Hello, everyone. Hope you are doing well. Welcome back to another episode of Brown People Problems, where I, Nikita, your host, chat about what it looks like to navigate life while being brown. Now, typically I have a guest join me, but for today, it's just me, myself, and I thought we'd have a frank conversation about the recent coronation of King Charles III. So I have a lot of thoughts and I have a lot of feelings about the royal family and just about this recent coronation. If any of you listening know me personally, you know that I am a huge history nerd. I am European history, is in specific British history, has just been such a huge source of fascination for me, especially the Regency era and the Tudor period. These have been, the specific points in history that I just love, and I devour anything related to these two specific eras. And I've just always found the British history really fascinating. How come these people from this really, really tiny, rainy island in the world managed to control pretty much, what was it, like half of the world or more than half of the world at some point, and continue to be really the only royal family that has this much amount of influence. So I wanted to sit down and chat with you about the coronation, about the royal family, how you feel about them, how I feel about them, and looking a little bit into what science says about why we are so obsessed with the royals. So if you're listening, if you clicked on this episode, chances are that you're also a little bit curious about this topic. I, for one, am very curious because I don't know about you and how you felt about the recent coronation, but I, for one, felt very, very conflicted. I identify as Indo-Canadian. I have South Asian, Indian ancestry, and for anybody who knows, any amount of basic history, we know that the South Asian subcontinent was brutally colonized for hundreds of years by the British, and before them, the Portuguese. And, we've kind of gone through our trials with a bunch of different European nations, but the British really kind of colonized the South Asian subcontinent for hundreds of years. And we know that colonial trauma does really contribute to intergenerational trauma. So I have a lot of mixed feelings. I feel really conflicted. There's almost this deep sense of curiosity and fascination with the royals that I think maybe a lot of you might appreciate. But there's an equally painful presence of knowledge of oppression and exploitation we suffered as a group. So a lot of people in my personal life that I was talking to recently about this coronation, I almost felt envious of them, because either people in my life have a very rigid view that they really don't understand or support the monarchy in any way, and others do. There was very little amount of people like me who are confused about how they feel. So if there's anyone listening who also feels confused and conflicted, please let me know, comment, share your thoughts with me so I feel a little less alone. That's what I kind of want to talk about today. For those of us who are, why are we still so obsessed and involved with the royal families, and what is it about them that's just so fascinating for us? Because for a lot of people from countries and cultures that have been colonized, this is a difficult topic to navigate, and there's a lot of guilt and shame that comes with being interested in the monarchy and the coronation to begin with. For those who didn't know, I live in Canada, and like I said, I come from the South Asian subcontinent, so we have a history of colonialism there. And then Canada is part of the Commonwealth. So, we still have the Queen on our money. My passport still says the Queen, and I guess now it's going to be changed to the King. But we are surrounded by the monarchy. We don't really know what the Commonwealth really is or why they are on our money, but we're just constantly surrounded by reminders of the monarchy. So the question for today's episode is, how do we reconcile with this conflicting fascination with the monarchy and with our own bloody and painful cultural histories. And why this curiosity and fascination to begin with? It was interesting. I was recently on vacation in a country, in actually a European country that was once colonized by the British. And I was attending a guided tour of the city that I was in, and, you know, a historical guided tour just to get to know the city a little bit better. And it was really interesting because the tour guide, you know, kept referring to the Stockholm syndrome as a way to explain some people's continuing fascination and alliance with the monarchy in his country. And that was really interesting, and, you know, we laughed about it. But that really got me thinking, and that's what kind of inspired today's episode, because the way that he was describing it, he said, you know, people who are still kind of supporting or watching the coronation on TV have a bad case of the Stockholm syndrome, where the oppressed has fallen in love with the oppressor, and they're revering the oppressor. And that's, you know, in the context of that. And we know that, you know, I don't want to turn this into a history lesson, but we know that colonialism, especially in the South Asian subcontinent, has really left us with this like deep-seated sense of racism and discrimination that continues to affect brown people today. Many of the issues that we face in our daily lives, whether it's ingrained like internalized racism or the sense of like white supremacy, these can all be traced back to the colonial powers and how they exploited our ancestors. In the South Asian subcontext specifically, there's just a lot of internalized racism and seeing sort of like white as a benchmark. So the thing is that even as we, you know, try to move forward and we try to build a better future for ourselves and for our communities, we are constantly reminded of the ways in which colonialism has held us back. Especially if you've listened to some of the other episodes, we talk a lot about intergenerational trauma here on this podcast, and how millennials today are still kind of, you know, like working through the ripple effects of colonial trauma that our ancestors went through. If you're curious about that, hit pause here and go listen to that episode. It's the episode that literally says intergenerational trauma. You'll find that interesting. And for so many of us, through this internalized racism, the effects of colonialism are still felt today. So why are we tuning in to a coronation that is happening? Why are we obsessed with it? Why are we watching it? Because I think even if you don't feel this like sentiment personally, chances are you listening to this probably know someone in your life who would fit this description. So I did some research, and I was curious about what does research and psychology say about why royals remain so popular and have such a big viewership when most of us can't really explain in simple English what their role is in the world anymore. So I found a number of studies, and I found a number of articles written by psychologists and like behavioral scientists that talk about this. One study said that monarchies actually tend to produce higher standards of living than republics, apparently because they do a better job at protecting private property rights and provide a necessary check on pesky politicians. That was a really interesting take. So this study goes on to share that constitutional monarchies are just where royals kind of throw lavish parties, but the actual governing is left to the elected leaders. And they have some of the highest standards of living on the planet, like UK, Sweden, Denmark, Netherlands, and Japan. One of the possible reasonings for this, the article talked about, could be that as, you know, like the elected prime minister or president of that country, you have almost like someone else to answer to, which is the crown. And so you don't actually have all the free reign to do whatever you want. And knowing that there's, I guess, in a way, a higher power above you can subdue you a little bit. So according to this theory, a reason for their enduring popularity is their success in producing higher standards of living than republics in general. If someone wants to fact check this, please do so and let me know. Another study by someone called John Just, who's an NYU professor, talks about that people basically, like, we're social animals and we like to cling to traditions and long-standing social systems that justify our desire for order, safety, and predictability. And that, explanation has been used to explain in so many different places why people still kind of feel drawn to this, to the monarchy, to the royals. There's another professor and psychologist at Temple University, and who's a former APA president, which is the American Psychological Association, who kind of compares this obsession with royals to obsessions with celebrities. He says, quote, "With famous media figures, people we learn about, celebrities, etc., we often live some of our lives through them. This is what he calls parasocial behavior. Parasocial behavior is basically where you create a one-sided relationship with someone and you become attached to that person without actually interacting with them in any meaningful way. So parasocial behavior can look like becoming emotionally invested in your favorite TV show, becoming emotionally invested in your favorite sports teams. Their wins are your wins, their losses are your losses. Or, in this example, becoming emotionally invested in the lives of the royal family. An extreme case of parasocial behavior would, of course, be like stalking behavior, where you're so emotionally invested. But what most of us experience is along this spectrum. Dr. Farley, who is a professor and a psychologist at Temple University in the States, he goes on to talk about in celebrities, like, this makes specific sense because celebrities capture attention because they illustrate the things that we've been taught to covet, however subconsciously. We all have dreams of wealth, we all have dreams of fame and happiness and style and influence. And a lot of this starts early on with fairy tales and perhaps how kids are raised. And he talks about how this kind of like illusion really plays into our deep-seated attraction to heroism. And so people like royals and celebrities and like Hollywood figures and the Kardashians, they keep that phenomena alive. As I look into this psychology of heroism a little bit more, I get curious. So in psychology, heroism is defined as is not as the urge to surpass all others at whatever cost, but it's the urge to serve others at whatever cost. So it's not about being better than everyone else. It's about serving others at whatever cost. So according to Dr. Frank Farley, he talks about this, what we kind of, the lives that we see royals live, it really feeds into our attraction to heroism. That's what keeps this interest alive. There's another psychologist in the States, Dr. Donna Rockwell. She specializes in celebrity and fame. And her research, in her professional opinion, is that it's a royal family's strict adherence to procedure and tradition that really is the key. So that was curious for me. I did not expect to read that. She talks about how it's basically really comforting for people to see structure, where that structure seems to create a semblance of order. So in some way, when an adult is, or I guess us regular people are feeling a sense of chaos, it's comforting, neurologically speaking, to be able to observe something of structure. So we see structure, we feel comforted, and it's a neurological response of relaxation. I don't know how I feel about that. When I watch The Crown, I feel suffocated, I think, oftentimes by the rigidity of some of the rules in there. So I don't know how you feel listening to this. Does that resonate with you? According to Dr. Rockwell, the royals have this ability to make people feel like they're part of one big happy family. So the royal family, for a lot of us, can represent order, discipline, stability, and a sort of calmness and communication with one another that physiologically settles a person. So when we say neurologically and physiologically, her reasoning is that, say you're watching a super angry, anger-charged political event on TV. You are, as you're watching that, you're going to have a certain physiological and neurological reaction to that. You'll find yourself in fight or flight mode, which is going to create cortisol and adrenaline within your body. And it's going to create internal stress that you're going to feel. So watching the royal family can be in direct contrast to that. So you can, when we see a sense of calmness and stability, that sense of calmness and stability can be replicated within us, just like watching something angry can incite a sense of fight or flight. Watching something opposite tends to do the opposite. According to her, when we say watch the royal family interact on TV, we see the love and we're, physiologically calming down our amygdala. Our amygdala is a part of our brain that's like the emotion center of our brain. And she also talks about how our reward center is activated. So we're getting calm neurons firing and hormones, endorphins that produce good feelings and well-being. So that was some of the professional opinions I found online on that could possibly explain why we feel so attracted and drawn to the royal families. Let me know your thoughts and your opinions below. I'm still kind of sitting with this a little bit. I will have to just watch myself a little bit curiously next time I am watching the royals on TV, and see if it's a sense of calm that I'm feeling or if it's something else. Again, this is a sort of a bit of a touchy topic, and regardless of what your opinion is, your opinion is your opinion. On this podcast, we're not trying to influence anyone to feel a certain way or to hold a certain opinion. If you are a monarchist, that is okay, right? It's about what works for you, and you are entitled to your own opinion. And if you are against the monarchy, then your opinion is also valid. But I thought I'd come on here and talk a little bit about this because I think there's been a lot of mixed responses and a lot of mixed feelings about the coronation of King Charles III that happened a couple weeks ago actually. And when Queen Elizabeth passed away a few months ago, there was a lot of mixed feelings there as well. And I don't know if there's one right way to feel about this. It's okay to feel conflicted about both of these things. I'm here to help you get curious about why you might be feeling the way that you're feeling, especially because anything to do with the monarchy or the royals can be a complicated topic for brown people. So how do you feel about the recent coronation? Let me know your thoughts. You can always send an email if you want to chat a little bit more with me or share your opinions about the episode that you're listening to. Or if you are watching on YouTube, the comment section is here for you to use. Let me know what your thoughts are. And if you do want to email me, my email address will be in the show notes. Thanks so much for joining me today. It was really nice chatting with everyone. And I will see you in my next one. The guest and the host of Brown People Problems do not offer individualized therapeutic or medical advice, and our conversations should not be interpreted as such. This podcast is not a replacement for therapy. This podcast exists for educational purposes only. Please consider your circumstances and engage with the content mindfully.